Welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting the daily news analysis, and in today's discussion we'll be discussing various topics from The Hindu and Indian Express which hold immense importance and relevance from the UPSC exam point of view. So let us look into today's topics. The first topic of today will be deadlock at COP28 climate talks forces negotiations into an overtime, where we will be discussing about the possibility and the negotiations between different countries in phasing out unabated coal. The next one is India's extreme rainfall corridor. It is nothing but the impact of climate change on the monsoon patterns in India. The next one is Rajya Sabha passes bill for appointment of CEC and ECs. The previous provisions compared to the present provision as well as the opinion of the Supreme Court will be discussed here. The next one is about the GPAI, that is nothing but a global partnership on artificial intelligence, and India's initiative in regulating the artificial intelligence will be discussed here. And the final news will be about the Pompe disease, which is nothing but a rare genetic disorder. The first topic for today is deadlock at COP28 climate talks forces negotiations into overtime. So this particular news is talking about one major issue of contention between different countries at the Conference of Parties 28th meeting, which is taking place at Dubai, UAE. The particular issue of contention is nothing but phasing out of unabated coal, where there are few countries which are for it and few countries have their arguments against phasing out of unabated coal. So let's look into the issue. This particular topic becomes relevant from GS paper 3, conservation, environment, pollution and degradation, and the other dimension that hold relevance for this from this particular topic include climate change, the Conference of Parties, phasing out of fossil fuels, and the concept of CCUS, that is nothing but carbon capture, utilization and storage. Let us move further. So if you look at the relevance of this particular topic, questions of similar kind have appeared in both the prelims and the mains examination. If you look at the previous prelims question, it talks about what is blue carbon, and also a question in 2021 where they have asked about the outcomes of 26th session of COP and what are the commitments made by India in this conference. So when it comes to the Conference of Parties, always we need to read the agenda, the outcomes and India's commitments. So this is how this topic is actually important from the exam point of view. So let's move into the news. So there is actually the Conference of Parties 28th meeting is actually taking place in Dubai. So what is the major issue that is taking place there is that there is an issue of phasing out of unabated coal has become a major point of contention at the COP28. So while discussing the news, we'll be discussing about what is this concept of unabated coal, then what are the debates actually surrounding it, and what are the Conference of Parties, when did it come into existence, and what is the concept of CCUS. So what are the Conference of Parties? So COP stands for Conference of Parties, and it is nothing but an annual UN climate change conference under UNFCCC. This is nothing but United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So this is where the governments discuss how to limit and prepare for the future climate change. So currently COP28 is taking place in Dubai, UAE, and some of the key achievements of the previous COP, as I told you, the outcomes, achievements and the commitments of India towards that particular or in that Conference of Parties is important. So what are the key achievements of previous COP includes, if you look into the Paris Agreement, that is COP21 in 2015, it had an objective to limit the global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial limits, and the Kyoto Protocol of 1997, that is a COP3, aimed to reduce the GHG emissions. Now let us understand the issue which is hovering around unabated coal. So what do you mean by unabated coal? It is nothing but the burning of coal without capturing and storing the resultant carbon dioxide emissions contributing to global warming. This is nothing but when the thermal power plants or any kind of heavy industries release their effluents or the polluted air into the atmosphere, the carbon dioxide also is a part of it that is released into the atmosphere. So when there is a process of burning coal without capturing it directly into the atmosphere, then it is called as unabated coal. So what is the debate around phasing out of unabated coal? Phasing out is nothing but completely flushing the concept of unabated coal from a country. Here we have developed countries like the United States supporting the phasing out because we understand that developed countries have already transcended or already transitioned away from coal to a greater extent. While you see the developing countries like India, they are actually dependent for majority of their economic activities on coal, and some countries have powerful fossil fuel industries were not willing to commit to phase out of coal as it would hamper or harm their economies. So now let us understand what is CCUS. As we already discussed, CCUS is nothing but carbon capture, utilization and storage. And it has a number of technology or it involves a number of technologies that aim to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, particularly carbon dioxide from the industrial processes and power generation. So how and what are the stages that the CCUS involve? It includes, first of all, it is the capture. Capture is nothing but we separate the carbon dioxide from the other gases emitted by the industrial facilities or power plants. The next one is you actually involve a lot of techniques like absorption, like adsorption, chemical scrubbing and membrane separation for this process of capture. Moving on to utilization. Whatever carbon you have captured, we utilize it for various purposes instead of directly releasing into the atmosphere. So, the examples of utilization include, it helps in enhanced oil recovery, creating synthetic fuels like methanol and gasoline, and producing the building materials like concrete and other construction materials. So, for example, if we look at how does it enhance the oil recovery is that, when the oil, especially crude oil, which is highly viscous in nature, when injected with carbon dioxide, it reduces the viscosity of the crude oil, thereby enhancing the free flow of the oil towards the production well. So this is how it helps in enhanced oil recovery. Next one is storage. How do we store this captured carbon dioxide after utilization is that it is stored in underground geological formations. What are the geological formations? It can include the coal seams, it can include the saline aquifers and also depleted oil and gas reservoirs. So if you look at this pictorial representation, this is nothing but the CCUS, and if you see, the first step is the capture. While I told you the CO2 that is extracted from the gas fuels and the factories and power plants are first of all captured before being released directly into the atmosphere. The next one is the storage. If you see, the captured CO2 is transported to the storage sites via pipelines, trucks and ships. And this is pumped into the underground reservoirs of rock formations where the CO2 is permanently stored. The final one is the utilization. That is, you leverage the remaining carbon dioxide to convert into usable products. Like I told you, we use it for construction materials and other things. Now looking into the benefits of CCUS. Obviously, when the carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas, when it is prevented or trapped from being released into the atmosphere, it helps to reduce the carbon greenhouse emissions, which means it actually helps in reducing or it prevents the increase in temperature, thereby keeps global warming under check. Also, it creates economic opportunities, that is large projects like the CCUS helps providing employment. And also the last one is clean energy transition. So this will help us achieve our net zero target. Moving on, looking into the challenges of CCUS. It is high cost, that is the technology which is involved in this carbon capture and utilization mechanism is very sophisticated, and hence it actually costs a hefty amount. Next one is technological limitation. Obviously, like technological limitation as in the projects like CCUS are actually very sophisticated in terms of storage. That is, it requires huge areas for storage. So there we have, in countries like India, have technological limitations. The next one is license to increase the emissions. That is, the heavy industries or highly polluting industries, they can make use of the CCUS and use this as an avenue or an excuse to create or cause more pollution. Next one is the environmental concerns, because the stored carbon dioxide, which is, it faces the risk of being leaked, which actually causes contamination of underground water or soil in the future. Thereby, it causes a lot of impact on the biodiversity. The next topic is India's extreme rainfall corridor. This is nothing but a recent study by the IIT researchers where they have actually observed the impact of global warming or climate change on the monsoon patterns in India. So this becomes relevant from GS paper 1, that is important geophysical phenomena, and GS paper 3, environmental pollution and degradation. So we will be discussing Indian monsoon, climate change and extreme weather events associated with it. So moving forward, we have a previous year question related to the monsoon in both prelims as well as mains. In prelims, there was a question on seasonal reversal of winds, and in mains, you look at the behavior of Indian monsoons and how it has been changing due to the humanizing landscape, and they've asked to discuss about it, followed by a question in 2017 asking about the monsoon climate that succeeds in feeding more than 50% of the world population residing in monsoon Asia. So moving ahead, why this particular piece of information or the topic is in news? So there has been a recent research or the study conducted by the IIT researchers who actually have deduced or observed that Indian monsoon has been increasingly impacted by the global warming or the climate change, and they've also found out a consistent pattern that has been observed in the occurrence of extreme rainfall events in India. So here, let us understand the monsoon, what is Indian monsoon, the characteristics and how the climate change has been impacting monsoon. So if we look at monsoons, these are nothing but the seasonal wind systems that actually bring the requisite amount of rainfall to India to the Indian subcontinent and the surrounding regions. And also, monsoons are actually the climatic conditions which actually play a vital role in designing and shaping the region's agriculture, economy and overall climate. So if we look at the key features, as I told you, these are seasonal reversal. Okay, so these are the winds that actually blow from the southwest direction in the month of June to September, and they are called as the southwest monsoon, which brings sufficient rainfall to the Indian subcontinent. This gets reversed in the month of October to March, and this is called as the northeast monsoon. The onset and the withdrawal. The sudden onset of the monsoon actually brings about the outburst, that is the rainfall to the Indian subcontinent, and its withdrawal is actually characterized by comparatively drier conditions. So if you look into the other characteristic of monsoons, it is alternated by the active and the break periods. Active periods are nothing but they bring widespread rain to the Indian subcontinent, whereas break periods are nothing but they are extended dry conditions or dry spells. Moving on, the monsoons are also characterized by the local areas of low pressure, and this is called as the monsoon depression. Now let us look into how does climate change impact the Indian monsoon. First of all, climate change has brought about a huge impact by altering the characteristic of the monsoon. Like, it has delayed the onset, the withdrawal, and the extensive breaks of the monsoons have been observed in the recent past. Followed by that, there has been decrease in the total seasonal rainfall. That is, if you see over the past 7 decades, that is 70 years, there has been a downward trend that has actually been seen in the total seasonal monsoon rainfall. Moving on, you can see changes in the rainfall patterns as the researchers have actually observed rightly. There have been longer dry spells, and also the wet spells are found to be more intense. Like longer dry spells of lower intensity and more intense wet spells, and this kind of irregularity is posing a lot of challenge in the management of agriculture, in water management and agriculture. Now let us look into the influence of the global phenomena on Indian monsoons. So what are these global phenomena? These are nothing but the El Nino conditions, the La Nina conditions. You have the Indian Ocean dipole followed by the Madden-Julian oscillation. So let us look into the global phenomena one by one and the impact that they actually have on the Indian monsoon. So first of all, let's look into the ENSO, that is El Nino Southern Oscillation. So we know this is nothing but there is a periodic variation in the sea surface temperature in the Eastern Pacific Ocean, okay? And this affects the climate of much of the tropics and the subtropics. So when there is a warming phase of the sea surface temperature, it is known as El Nino, and the cooling phase is called as La Nina. And how does it impact the Indian monsoon? El Nino actually leads to a weaker monsoon, whereas La Nina favors the Indian monsoon, and it also results in flood-like situation and excessive rainfall and excessive flooding. Moving on, we will look into the Indian Ocean dipole. This is nothing but it is an irregular oscillation of sea surface temperature between the western and the eastern Indian Ocean. And when the western part of the Indian Ocean is warmer, we call it as the positive IOD. And on the eastern side, when it is warmer, it is called as the negative IOD. And during this period of positive IOD, the Indian summer monsoon rainfall is good as compared to that of the negative IOD when the eastern side is comparatively warmer. Now moving on to the Madden-Julian oscillation. This is nothing but it is the eastern moving of the clouds, the rainfall, the winds and the pressure that will actually traverse the planet in the tropics, and it returns to the starting point. That is, from where it had started, it traverses the planet and returns to the original point in 30 to 60 days on an average. So this impact of Madden-Julian oscillation on Indian monsoon, it depends on the periodicity. If the cycle of Madden-Julian oscillation is shorter, the better will be the Indian monsoon. If it is nearly 30 days, then it brings good rainfall during the monsoon season. And if it is above 40 days, then MJO doesn't give good showers and could even lead to drought or dry conditions. Now looking at the observations that the researchers had actually done on the rainfall or the erratic rainfall patterns. So the study by the IIT researchers on large-scale extreme rainfall found a consistent pattern in where the extreme rainfall occurs in India. That is, from the period of 1901 to 2019, we can observe that certain regions of India have been exposed to extreme climatic events, okay? That is, those regions include, if you can look at the map over here, we can see that West Bengal and Odisha, this region, to Rajasthan and Gujarat, this region has actually formed a highway or a corridor of extreme weather events. So that is what they are actually mentioning here. If you look into it, you can see that despite many impacts of global warming on Indian monsoon, there's a highway that is stretching from West Bengal and Odisha to Gujarat and Rajasthan, where the heavy rain events are particularly concentrated, which has remained the same for decades spanning from 1901 to 2019. So what is the significance of this particular study? It is important to study because it actually makes us understand the pattern of climatic change that is happening and the impact that climate change is happening on the Indian subcontinent. And understanding this highway of extreme rainfall it will be helpful for better understanding and for better preparedness during the heavy rain events. The next news for discussion will be Rajya Sabha passing the bill for the appointment of Chief Election Commissioners and the election commissioners. So this particular topic is relevant from GS paper 2, appointment to various constitutional posts. And as you know, all the constitutional and the statutory bodies, their composition, their aim and objectives are all important from the exam perspective. So here we'll be reading about the Election Commission of India, the appointment and the eligibility of the Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioners. So moving forward, we have a previous year question that has actually appeared from this section on the Election Commission of India. So as I told you, it becomes important from the exam perspective. So now moving on to the context. So Rajya Sabha had recently passed the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners appointment, conditions of service and terms of office bill. So first of all, what is this bill or a piece of legislation about is that it will provide the framework based on which the future appointments of the Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioners will be. Okay, so the legislation will provide the framework for the future appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioners. So first let us look into what is the Election Commission of India, the composition and the qualifications. So the Election Commission of India is an autonomous constitutional authority which is responsible for conducting free and fair elections in India under Article 324 of the Indian Constitution. So moving on, if you see the composition, the Election Commission consists of a Chief Election Commissioner and 2 election commissioners. So if you look at the appointment of the election commissioner, that is the Chief Election Commissioner and the other election commissioners are done by the President on the recommendation of the Union Cabinet. The Union Cabinet is nothing but a supreme decision-making executive body in India. So, if we look into the appointment of the CEC or the ECs, the appointment is made by the President, however, on the recommendations by the supreme decision-making body in India, that is nothing but the Union Cabinet. So now, let's look into what is the issue with the method of appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioners. So, in 2015, there was a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court that challenged the central government's appointment process of election commission members, which is considered to be undermining the autonomy of the independent constitutional body. That is nothing but the Election Commission. Because as we see, the President is appointing on the recommendations or as per the recommendations of the Union Cabinet. So, there was a public interest litigation that actually challenged the government's method of appointment of the Election Commission members. So, following this, in 2018, the Supreme Court referred this case to a larger bench in order to have a detailed scrutiny under Article 324 of the Constitution. So, following this in 2023, the Supreme Court ruled that both the CEC and the ECs will be appointed by the President and they will be advised by the committee. This committee shall constitute the Prime Minister, the leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha and the Chief Justice of India. So, this arrangement will remain until the Parliament will enact a dedicated or a separate law for their appointments. So, this was what opined by the Supreme Court. Accordingly, the Union Government has recently introduced the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners appointment, conditions of service and terms of office bill in the Parliament. So, let us look into the key provisions of the bill. According to the bill, the CEC and the EC will be appointed by the President only, but by a select committee which consists of the Prime Minister, and then they will have a Union Cabinet Minister, which was previously constituted, that position was occupied by the Chief Justice of India. But here, the bill replaces Chief Justice of India by a Union Cabinet Minister, and then a leader of opposition or the leader of the largest opposition party in the Lok Sabha. That is, as I told you, the bill excluded the office of the CJI. Now, the recommendations of this particular select committee will be valid even if there is a vacancy in the committee. And following that, a search committee led by the cabinet secretary, this will suggest a list of candidates to the selection committee. So, these were the key provisions of the bill. Now, let us look into the eligibility criteria. So, the bill says the eligibility criteria for the Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioners will be the candidates who have held an equivalent position to that of a secretary to the central government. Earlier, it was equivalent to the judges of the Supreme Court. And also, it says that the salary and the service conditions for the CEC and the ECs will match those of that of the Cabinet Secretary, which was also earlier equivalent to that of the judges of the Supreme Court. Now, let's move on to the issues with that of the bill. So, it says that the process, that is the selection process of the election commission, may be dominated by the government, because as I told you, the select committee has the Prime Minister, who is from the ruling party. Next, a cabinet minister who is also selected by the Prime Minister, and then the leader of the opposition. So, if we look into the constitution of the select committee, we see that there is an issue with the balance of power. The second one is making the CEC and the EC salary equivalent to the cabinet secretary will also lead to the government influence. And the next one is earlier, as the CEC and the EC salary were actually similar to that of the judges of the Supreme Court, it is looked upon as a step down to the constitutional post that these officers actually hold. Apart from the issue of balance of power, we also see an impact on electoral governance. That is, the interference of the government in the appointment of the CEC and the EC will have implications on the autonomy and the implications on the impartial and the integrity that the constitutional body of Election Commission will hold. And finally, it is not in line with the framers of the Constitution. So, the framers of the Constitution always intended to give an independent body, that is an election commission, which will conduct its fair and free elections independent of the government's influence. So, this bill does not coincide, or it's not on the same page with the mindset of the framers of the Constitution. So, the next news is about the AI summit, that is the recent global partnership on AI, which is nothing but GPAI summit that India is actually hosting. So here, if we see, the artificial intelligence has been in news for, in the recent past. So this becomes very important from the prelims as well as the mains perspective. And you can map it to current events of national and international importance. And in this article, we will be dealing with the artificial intelligence, the global partnership on artificial intelligence, the Bletchley Declaration, and the initiatives as well as the laws that actually regulate AI in India. So moving forward, we have a previous year question that talks about the artificial intelligence and the kind of functions that artificial intelligence can perform. So this particular topic becomes relevant from the exam perspective. So now moving on to the news. So India is currently hosting the annual Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence. So in this particular partnership, what is going to be the agenda of discussion is nothing but the issues like safety and the developmental challenges that India and the other countries are actually facing with respect to artificial intelligence. So first of all, what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is nothing but it is the ability of machines to perform cognitive behaviors or activities. What are these cognitive behaviors or activities? It includes decision making, and then it includes thinking, perceiving, learning, and all these things. So artificial intelligence is nothing but the ability of the machines to perform cognitive or behavioral activities that can actually replace or that can perform equivalent to that of humans. So this is what is artificial intelligence. Now moving on to Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence. So this is nothing but a multi-stakeholder initiative which was launched in the year 2020, and we had 15 members. We have 15 members, and the idea was proposed or propounded by the G7 nations. India is a founding member, very important, and China is not. And the secretariat is hosted at the OECD. And what is the major objective of GPAI is that in order to bridge the gap between the theory and practice on AI, how do you bring about or how do you bridge the gap is that you give them or support the cutting edge research and applied activities on AI related priorities. Next one is, through this initiative, we have all the engaged minds in expertise from science, industry, civil society, governments and international organizations coming together in order to discuss the challenges or the developmental challenges that nations actually face with respect to AI. Now, the recent development on artificial intelligence is that we have the Bletchley Declaration, which was an agreement signed in the year 2023. It was nothing but it had 29 countries that included India as well as European Union, and where the nations actually came together and they agreed that on one side, though AI actually has the potential to transform human lives, on the other side, AI is posing a significant risk, that is including those domains of daily life. So now looking into the initiatives by India, first we have the Future Skills Prime, which is an initiative by MeitY, that is Ministry of Electronics and IT in collaboration with NASSCOM. It is nothing but it aims at upskilling the IT professionals, okay, in the field of artificial intelligence. Next, if you look at, it's a national strategy for artificial intelligence in order to develop an ecosystem for the research and adoption of AI. Next one is the National AI Portal, which is nothing but a repository of all the AI-based initiatives. And next one is the National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical Systems. Moving on, we have the National Program on Responsible Use of AI for Youth. This is nothing but it is to empower the youth and to reduce the gap between the skill and the expertise that they have to have for the AI and prepare the students for the evolving job market. Followed by the RAISE initiative in 2020, which is nothing but Responsible AI for Social Empowerment. And now moving on, let's look into the AI regulations in India. So first of all, if we see, India does not have any particular law for the regulation of AI or to counter its developmental challenges. However, you have the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology that is a regulatory body so far for artificial intelligence in India. That is, it has the responsibility for the development, implementation and management of AI laws and guidelines in India. What are the other legislative measures? We have intellectual property law, certain provisions of the law. Then we have sections 43 and 72 of the IT Act. And then we have the Information Technology Rules 2021. This is nothing but it keeps all the content in the social media as well as people who are committing crime against the AI. It makes them obliged or accountable, okay, for their actions. Then we have Niti Aayog, which has also worked towards the establishment of AIRAWAT, that is IRAWAT, which is a mnemonics, which stands for AI Research, Analytics and Knowledge Assimilation Platform. The next news is about the Pompe disease, which is nothing but a rare genetic disorder that actually impacts the mobility and our day-to-day activities. So this is relevant from GS Paper 3, that is Science and Technology, and also GS Paper 2, Social Justice. So here the main focus should be on the Pompe disease, and since it's a rare disease, we'll understand what is the rare disease, and then also we will look into the National Policy of Rare Diseases 2021. So to get into the specifics of this disease, first we need to understand what is a gene, what is mutation, what is genetic mutation, and what are the harmful impacts that such mutation will result in. That is, it hampers the production of enzymes for the day-to-day functioning of the body. So let's move into the topic. So before moving on, there are previous year questions which are actually asked from similar topics. That is, if you see, there was a question on Zika virus disease and the symptoms. So you know diseases actually form an important part of basic science, that is general science. So moving into the news, Nidish Roy, India's first Pompe disease patient, passes away recently at the age of 24. So as I told you, first let us understand the gene and the genetic mutation and what causes this particular disease. So let's understand what is a gene. A gene is nothing but it is a genetic material that consists of all the required instructions for the production of proteins and enzymes. So after understanding or having understood what a gene is, now let us look into what is a mutation. A mutation is nothing but any kind of alteration in this set genetic material inside a gene is called as a genetic mutation. So this particular genetic mutation actually causes kind of aberrations or it causes a kind of disturbance in the production of enzymes or proteins that are responsible for our day-to-day functions. So first let us understand what is a Pompe disease. The Pompe disease is nothing but it is a deficiency of an enzyme. The enzyme is nothing but GAA, which is nothing but acid alpha glucosidase. So when there is a deficiency of this particular enzyme, this Pompe disease is caused. Why is there a deficiency in the enzyme? It is because of a mutation which has happened in a particular gene, and the gene is nothing but, it's again named the GAA, that is nothing but acid alpha glucosidase gene. So a mutation in the GAA gene has caused the enzyme, that is acid alpha glucosidase, to be deficient in the body. So GAA, what is the function of this enzyme? It is to break down the complex glycogen into glucose and sugars in order to release energy for the functioning of the body. So GAA, which is crucial for breaking down the glycogen into glucose within the liposomes of the cell. And the body, it converts this glycogen to glucose, which it uses for the production of energy, which ultimately results in the building up of lysosomes in the body cells. So what is a lysosome? A lysosome is nothing but it is a small organelle which encompasses all the enzymes that will break the complex biopolymers. Okay, so this is what is a lysosome, which is a small compartment inside the cell that holds and recycles certain substances. And enzymes such as GAA, they actually help in breaking down these particular substances. So if you see in this picture, this is an organelle that is called as the lysosome. Now let's move forward. If we take the prevalence of this Pompe disease, it ranges from 1 in 40,000 to 1 in 3 lakh. And if you look at the symptoms, it has muscle weakness and motor skill delay in children with this disease. Okay. And moving on, it has respiratory complication, and also it results in enlarged heart, which is nothing but the thickening of the heart wall muscles, which can eventually impair your heart functions. What is a cure for this particular disease is that there is no particular cure for this disease at the moment, and some of the treatments are actually there to improve the quality of life. However, there is no cure, like the enzyme replacement therapy. So as I told you, the treatment involves infusion of missing enzymes to alleviate the glycogen buildup. So here, as I told you, there is less production of GAA enzymes, which results in the accumulation of glycogen. Thereby, there is actually deficiency in the energy or the glucose or the sugars that is produced in the body. So about what is a rare genetic disorder? A rare genetic disorder is nothing but any disease that affects a very minuscule or a small portion of the population. That is called as a rare disease. And these are majorly caused due to genetic disorders, that is transferred via genes. So there are about 5,000 to 8,000 rare diseases so far, which affects around 6 to 8% of the population. Also, these are known as orphan diseases. Why these are called as the orphan diseases? Because the pharmaceutical companies have not come out with effective drugs in order to treat the same. Therefore, the drugs are also called as the orphan drugs. In India's case, about 450 rare diseases have been recorded, and there are around 70 million people who are affected by this particular rare diseases. Then if you look at the list of rare diseases, as you know, sickle cell anemia has been in news for a long time. So sickle cell anemia is a genetic or a rare disease, I can say. And then other diseases include hemophilia, thalassemia, and primary immunodeficiency in children. The next one is the lysosomal storage disorders, that is the LSD, is the most common rare disease if you see. Now moving on to the national policy of rare diseases. What is this? It mandates, that is this particular policy mandates a creation of national registry for rare diseases. Also, it classifies the rare diseases into 3 groups, that is group 1, group 2 and group 3, depending on the cure that the treatment can actually give. The group 1 diseases are those which can be controlled by one-time curative treatment, and these include osteoporosis and Fanconi anemia. The group 2 are those which can be controlled by long-term or lifelong treatment, which are relatively with a lower cost. Example are galactosemia and homocystinuria. Next one are group 3, where the treatment is available, but it is very, very expensive, that is very high cost and lifelong therapy. It includes disorders like SMA, the Pompe disease falls under group 3, and the Hunter syndrome. Moving on, for this, what is the government doing in order to deal with such rare diseases? The government is providing rupees 20 lakh for the poor patients to group 1 diseases under Ayushman Bharat. The last one is for group 3 diseases, the government creates a center of excellence, which is nothing but an online platform which has all the details of the patients and the voluntary donors who are registered there. Now let us solve certain prelims and mains practice questions. The first question, consider the following statements. Indian Constitution does not provide the eligibility criteria for the Chief Election Commissioner. Yes, this is correct. Only the office of the Chief Election Commissioner is recognized constitutionally, but no other election commissioners. Yes, it is correct. Election Commission has a final say on the allocation of symbol to any faction of the party in case of split in political party. Yes, this is also correct. And the process of removing the Chief Election Commissioner is same as the judge of the Supreme Court. This is also correct. So if you pick from the options, the answer will be D, all of the above. Moving on to the second question, consider the following statements about the carbon capture, utilization and storage CCUS. It primarily focuses on capturing and storing carbon dioxide from household emissions. This is wrong. In the utilization stage of CCUS, captured CO2 can be used for enhanced oil recovery and for creating building materials. This is correct. The next statement is, one of the challenges of CCUS is the potential environmental risk it poses due to the leakage of stored CO2. Yes, this is correct. So from the given options, answer will be C, which is 2 and 3 only. Moving on, with reference to the Global Partnership on AI, that is GPAI, consider the following statements. It is a multi-stakeholder initiative aiming to bridge the gap between theory and practice on AI by supporting cutting-edge research. Yes, it is correct. India is a founding member of GPAI. This is also correct. So from the given options, answer will be C, both 1 and 2. Moving on. The next question is on the Pompe disease. Consider the following statements. It is not considered a genetic disorder as it is caused by the deficiency of enzyme acid alpha glucosidase. This is a wrong statement because it is a genetic disorder. Complete cure to the disease is available like enzyme replacement therapy. No, this is wrong. No complete cure is available, and this enzyme replacement is only used to make your standard of living or quality of life better. So from the given options, you can deduce that the answer is none of the above. That is, answer is option D. Moving on to the next question, consider the following statements regarding climate phenomena and their impact on Indian monsoon. El Nino, characterized by a warming phase in the Pacific Ocean, leads to a stronger Indian monsoon. No, this is wrong. El Nino leads to weakening of Indian monsoon. A positive phase of the IOD typically results in enhanced Indian summer monsoon rainfall. This is correct. The MJO has a positive impact of Indian monsoon when its cycle is shorter than 40 days. Yes, when it is 30 days, it has a positive impact on the Indian monsoon system. So looking at the options, the correct answer will be option B, that is 2 and 3 only. Now moving on to the mains practice question. The question reads, evaluate the impact of climate change on the Indian monsoon system and assess the significance of extreme rainfall corridor in the context of changing monsoon dynamics. So with respect to this question, let us start with our introduction by discussing about a critical climatic system as the Indian monsoon. That is, we'll say Indian monsoon is a critical climate system, and we will discuss about the complexity and the importance of the monsoon. Moving ahead in the body, we will talk about the impacts and the influences of the monsoon. Okay, we'll have to also discuss about the changes in the rainfall patterns and varying intensities, and also talk about the global phenomena, that is the El Nino, the La Nina, then the MJO and the IOD impact on the monsoon patterns and how it actually has influenced the monsoon system. Moreover, we'll have to introduce the concept of extreme rainfall corridor, as we had discussed about the regions of West Bengal, Odisha stretching towards Gujarat and Rajasthan, forming a corridor of extreme climatic impacts from 1901 to 2019. So we'll talk about it, its discovery and its impact in understanding the monsoon patterns for better preparedness. Moving on, in the conclusion, we will talk about the overall impact of climate change on the Indian monsoon and emphasize the need for improved forecasting and adapting strategies. So here ends the daily news analysis. For regular updates, please like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.